The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, Lord.
The apostles said to the Lord, "Increase our faith." The Lord replied, "If you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you would say to this mulberry tree, 'Be uprooted and planted in the sea,' and it would obey you. Who among you would say to your servant who has just come in from plowing or tending sheep in the field, 'Come here immediately and take your place at table'? Would he not rather say to him, 'Prepare something for me to eat'? Put on your apron and wait on me while I eat and drink. You may eat and drink when I am finished." Is he grateful to that servant because he did what he was commanded? So should it be with you. When you have done all that you have been commanded, say, "We are unprofitable servants. We have done what we were obliged to do." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Most of us will hit a crisis in our lives sooner or later. It might have to do with the state of our health or with the loss of a loved one or with an important relationship in our lives breaking down. It might be the result of some devastating event that affects a much larger number of people, such as a war, famine, or some natural disaster like a hurricane. Time of crisis in our lives can affect our relationship with God. We might begin to wonder where God is in all of this. In such times, we easily identify with the words of the prophet Habakkuk in today's first reading. "How long, O Lord, I cry for help, but you do not listen. I cry out to you violence, but you do not intervene." This is the cry of the believer who, nevertheless, has serious questions to ask of God, and whose relationship with God is strained, to say the least. We can find the outburst of Habakkuk in today's reading rather reassuring. It reminds us that our relationship with God, what we call faith, can pass through a great variety of phases. In that sense, it is like our closest human relationship. Most of the time, we relate in a very positive way to those closest to us. But there will be times when those relationships are marked by anger, resentment, disappointment, confusion, and distress. The presence of these emotions is not necessarily a sign that the relationship is in serious trouble. It is simply a sign that the relationship is human. Habakkuk's questions to God reveal his anger, disappointment, and confusion with God. Yet, he was very much a believer. Indeed, his prophetic message found its place within the scriptures of his people. When we find those same emotions entering our relationship with God, it is not necessarily a sign that our faith is weakening. It would be a great mistake to interpret those feelings towards God as an indication that we are losing our faith. and then, on the basis of that, turn away from God and allow God to drift from our lives. The right way to deal with those emotions toward God is to acknowledge them and to express them to God in our own words, as the prophet Habakkuk did. We can make the mistake of thinking that faith is always a joyful and satisfying experience. And then, when it is not so, imagine that our faith is diminishing. The disciples in today's gospel reading seems to be concerned about how much faith they had. They turned to Jesus and asked for more faith. Increase our faith, or the petition of the disciples. However, Jesus did not respond to their request as they might have expected. He did not say to them, "Yes, your faith is weak. I will give you more." Instead, he stressed to them the power of a faith that is not bigger than that of a mustard seed, the smallest of all the seeds. In other words, when it comes to faith, the issue is not of quantity. Jesus suggests that even the tiniest level of faith is enough for God. God can touch our life through even the tiniest of openings that we make. The prayer of the disciples in today's gospel reading is one we find easy to identify with. We can sometimes feel dissatisfied with our faith and wonder about the state of our relationship with God. We might even describe ourselves as hanging on by a thread. If Jesus takes mustard seeds seriously, he probably takes threads seriously too. The thread may be all that the Lord needs to continue relating to us. At the end of the day, faith, as small as a mustard seed, is all that God needs. The parable that Jesus speaks in today's gospel reading suggests that what really matters in our relationship with God is that we stay the course, that we hang on in there. The setting of the story is drawn from the cultures in which Jesus lived. The servant in the story did what was asked of him. He dutifully kept to his routine day after day. He embodies faithfulness and reliability. This is a difficult word to pronounce. Faithfulness and reliability. Faithfulness and reliability. In our relationship with God, we are simply called to be faithful, to stay the course, even when our faith seems no bigger than a mustard seed. At times, we may feel that God is very distant from us. We may consider that our religious practice has become something of a routine with little excitement. We may wonder if we are just going through the motions, with nothing much sustaining what we do. We may even suspect that we are losing faith. The parable assures us that God sees our faithfulness, even when we might doubt it, and that God values our faithful service, even when we are tempted to make light of it. It is worth remembering that God will keep us faithful if we ask Him to do so. In that sense, faith is more God's doing than ours. Faith is always God's gift to us, and it is given to all who desire it. no matter how small that desire may appear to us. A desire, the, a desire the size of a mustard seed is all God needs to bestow His gifts. Today, we have been invited to treasure the gift of faith that God has given us, even if it appears to us to be no bigger than a mustard seed. As the Apostle Paul reminds Timothy in today's second reading, guard this rich trust. We look after this we look after this precious gift of faith by trying to live it faithfully, while relying on the power of God in doing so, as Paul says to Timothy. However, we will need the support of other believers if we are to be faithful. We are very dependent on each other's mustard seed of faith. Please stand and let us confess.